My name is Gift Mjakachi and I'm going to be presenting on poverty in contemporary Britain. This presentation will look into the following areas: an evaluation of the definition of absolute poverty, an evaluation of the definition of relative poverty, an explanation of how poverty has changed in Britain, and an analysis of different methods of measuring poverty. Absolute poverty. Absolute poverty is a condition where individuals or households lack the necessary resources to meet their basic needs such as food, shelter, clean water, health care, and clothing. The definition of absolute poverty is very useful in addressing extreme poverty in low-income societies where many people struggle to meet physical needs for survival. It provides a clear benchmark for identification of those in need, and once identified, resources can be channeled towards them. The definition of absolute poverty is universal in the sense that it provides a clear and consistent standard for comparing poverty across different societies over time. Its focus is on critical resources required for survival, and it helps in policy formulation and resource targeting. It also forms the basis for global aid programs where humanitarian efforts are often targeted at people in absolute poverty. However, the definition of absolute poverty has its own weaknesses, such as lack of contextual sensitivity, where it doesn't account for variations in cost of living, social expectations, and quality of services in different regions. The definition also uses outdated measures which can fail to reflect modern day costs associated with healthcare, education, and technology. It also negates other dimensions of poverty such as insecurity, exclusion, and vulnerability. The definition of absolute poverty is rigid and it can be problematic in times of economic change, inflation, and crisis. Evaluation of definition of relative poverty. Relative poverty refers to a situation where an individual or household income falls below the average level of a specific society, resulting in inability to participate in normal activities or enjoy the standard of living of that particular society. This definition highlights disparities within societies, focusing on inequalities rather than survival. The definition reflects relative poverty as a dynamic measure which is responsive to societal progress and economic change. It goes beyond physical survival to include social inclusion, participation, and dignity. It also addresses consequences of poverty such as marginalization and lack of access to opportunities. It encourages addressing inequalities through promoting policies aimed at reducing inequalities. However, it has weaknesses. Lack of universality in the sense that it depends heavily on society which it measures, making comparison with other societies difficult. It also focuses on inequality rather than basic needs. It is subjective to societal standards. For example, if the median falls due to economic downturns, a few people may be classified as poor. Since its focus is on inequality, there is also potential for policy shift to focus to inequality. Its emphasis is on income, neglecting other aspects of well-being such as access to public services, education, and health. An explanation of how poverty has changed in Britain. Poverty in Britain has undergone significant changes over decades. These changes have been influenced by shifts in government policies, economic cycles, globalization, technological advances, and demographic trends. Below is an overview of key changes in poverty in Britain. After the World War II, Britain experienced significant decline in absolute poverty. This is attributable to establishment of a welfare state, creation of NHS, expansion of public housing, social security benefits, and universal education. A post-war economic boom played a critical role in reducing poverty as wages rose and employment increased. In the 1980s, poverty in Britain shifted from absolute poverty to relative poverty, primarily as a result of political and economic changes. Economic restructuring and deindustrialization took place in the 1980s. Britain's economy shifted from manufacturing and heavy industry towards service and finance. Collapse of industries led to unemployment and poverty in areas affected by the collapse. The government of Margaret Thatcher introduced neoliberal economic policies which boosted economic growth but widened income gaps, leading to inequalities and growth in poverty levels. A new government of Labour Party came into power and sought to address the inequalities through social and economic policies such as minimum wage, credit and investment in public service. The financial crisis of 2008 to 2010 also changed the nature of poverty in Britain. The economic recession led to unemployment and wage stagnation. A series of austerity measures were introduced aimed to reduce the deficit, and these included cuts in welfare spending, cap in benefits, and a reduction in public spending. The COVID-19 pandemic also shaped poverty in Britain. The pandemic saw a widespread disruption of economic activities, resulting in job layoffs, exposing people to poverty. Poverty in Britain took the dimension of in-work poverty, where many people stay in low-paying, insecure jobs, resulting in failure to meet the cost of basic necessities. While Britain has seen reduction in certain types of poverty resulting from establishment of a welfare state, rising inequality, stagnant wages, and government cuts have seen growth of poverty in recent decades. An analysis of different methods of measuring poverty. Poverty is multifaceted, and policymakers, economists, and social scientists use various measures to assess it. Primary approaches to measuring poverty are absolute poverty line. This method defines poverty against fixed income thresholds considered the minimum necessary for basic survival. It remains constant over time across countries. It is easy to implement. It provides a universal benchmark, however, it ignores the social context. Its static nature means it cannot reflect on social expectations or economic conditions over time. Relative poverty line. Relative poverty line measures poverty as a percentage of the median, for example, 50% or 60% of the median income. It reflects the level of inequality in a society. It adapts to changes in societal wealth, highlights inequalities, addresses social exclusion and marginalization. It is a dynamic measure as it adjusts to economic growth or a downturn. It is subjective, meaning someone can be classified poor even with adequate resources. It lacks universality and can overstate poverty in wealthy countries. Multidimensional poverty measures poverty through a variety of indicators across multiple dimensions such as health, education, living standards, and access to services. It offers a comprehensive view touching on multiple aspects of poverty beyond income. It impacts on policy, helping governments to take a holistic approach in poverty reduction strategies. However, collection of data for such indicators is complex and requires substantial resources. Consumption-based measure. This approach is based in household consumption rather than income. It looks at the level of consumption for food, healthcare, housing, and other essentials. The advantage here is that it may provide an accurate picture of material well-being than income alone. However, consumption data collection can be time-consuming and expensive. Poverty gaps indexes.